At 16 years old, he took the money set aside for his college education and buried it in the ground. No degree, no safety net, no backup plan, just an adolescent betting everything on his ability to pull gold out of one of Earth's most punishing environments. Today, that decision controls nearly 10,000 acres of raw Yukon wilderness, extracts upwards of $40 million in gold every single year, and runs mining operations so vast they operate like a self-sustaining industrial metropolis. That man is Parker Schnabel, and what he has quietly constructed in the Klondike is unlike anything the modern mining world has ever seen. So how exactly did he make it happen? And what is truly unfolding across all that territory? Let's excavate the full story. But before we get into the man himself, let's first understand the sheer scale of what he actually commands. Because the numbers are genuinely staggering, the empire nobody anticipated. Let me sketch out precisely what Parker Schnabel currently commands, because the magnitude is genuinely staggering. We're discussing 10,000 acres of premium Yukon land, larger than some actual municipalities, stretching across Dominion Creek, complete with mineral rights, water permits, and infrastructure that resembles less a mining site and more a standalone industrial city. At the heart of this empire lies a $15 million land purchase representing the most significant private placer gold transaction in modern Yukon history. 400 mining claims, 80,000 ounces of recoverable gold estimated beneath the surface at current prices, which have surged past $2,500 per ounce. We're examining a gross asset valuation approaching $200 million. And should gold climb above $5,000, that figure doubles to $400 million in latent potential sitting beneath Parker's soil. But it isn't merely about what's underground. It's about the apparatus he's engineered to extract it. Little Flake Mining, Parker's principal operating company, runs 4 enormous wash plants concurrently during peak season, something no private placer operation in the Klondike has ever attempted. We're talking Roxanne, Big Red, Sluicifer, and Big Bob, industrial monsters processing millions of cubic yards of earth annually, operating 24 hours daily, 7 days weekly during the brief Yukon mining window. The equipment armada alone is breathtaking. Cat 700 and 460 excavators tearing through frozen terrain, articulated rock trucks transporting overburden across miles of haul roads, custom-built wash plants, each representing millions in capital investment, Miller welding rigs for on-site fabrication and emergency repairs. The entire operation incinerates $100,000 to $250,000 every single day. Factor in diesel, wages, maintenance, capital expenditures, and the crew, roughly 50 personnel working 2 12-hour shifts, managing everything from excavation to gold recovery to mechanical repairs in one of North America's most remote regions. Dominion Creek sits 2 hours from Dawson City with absolutely zero cellular coverage, meaning complete self-reliance. If equipment fails, you repair it yourself or witness millions in production vanish while machinery sits dormant. During a record week in 2025, Parker's operation extracted 827 ounces of gold, worth approximately $2.9 million in a solitary 7-day period. That's what modest mines generate across an entire decade. The seasonal target, 10,000 ounces, $40 to $50 million in revenue annually, supporting debt obligations, operational expenses, and the relentless expansion that has crowned Parker the sovereign of the Klondike. This isn't some fortunate family pastime that struck it rich. This is industrial-grade mining, functioning at a caliber that rivals corporate operations, all directed by someone barely 30 years of age. But none of this started with millions, or fame, or a camera crew following him around. It started with a grandfather, a small mine in Alaska, and a 16-year-old making a decision that most people in his position would never have dared. Big Nugget, the grandfather, was started it all, and the birth of Little Flake Mining. Parker Schnabel's origin story doesn't start in the Yukon. It commences in Haines, Alaska, at a place called Big Nugget Mine, where his grandfather, John Schnabel, known universally as Big John, operated a small yet profitable gold mining venture. Most children grow up gaming or joining Little League. Parker grew up operating heavy machinery by age 5. Yes, 5 years old. He was learning to run excavators under Big John's vigilant supervision, while other kindergarteners mastered their ABCs. Parker was studying soil composition, overburden depths, and how to interpret a cut for gold-bearing gravel. Big John wasn't simply teaching his grandson a profession. He was instilling a philosophy. Mining isn't about fortune. It's about discipline, efficiency, and refusing to surrender when circumstances become brutal. Those lessons were drilled into Parker through childhood summers laboring at the Big Nugget claim rather than attending camp or socializing with peers. But here's the reality about Big Nugget. It was constrained, a modest operation, finite reserves, and geologically limited compared to what the Yukon presented. Big John recognized the genuine potential lay northward in the Klondike, a region with deeper alluvial deposits, massive untapped claims, and the scalability that Alaska couldn't match. So, when Parker turned 16, he confronted a decision that would shape his entire existence. He'd been accepted to university, with a trust fund earmarked specifically for tuition. The conventional route would have been attend school, earn a degree, perhaps return to mining later with credentials and connections. Parker chose an alternative path. He took that college fund, money designated for education, and deployed it as seed capital to launch a mining operation in the Yukon. No diploma, no safety net, just an adolescent wagering everything on his capacity to locate gold in one of Earth's most punishing environments. His initial move wasn't toward easy, proven ground. Parker leased a claim at Scribner Creek from Tony Beets, one of the most dominant and notoriously demanding landowners in the entire Dawson City district. The lease terms were merciless. Tony Beets structured it with an escalating royalty beginning at 10%, climbing to 15%, and ultimately reaching 25% once production hit specific thresholds. The more gold Parker discovered, the larger slice Tony claimed. Parker absorbed 100% of the extraction risk, equipment costs, fuel, wages, everything, while Tony relaxed and collected a guaranteed percentage of the gross. Most would have labeled that arrangement a snare. Parker perceived it as tuition because functioning under those conditions enforced a degree of operational efficiency that would later become his trademark. Every litre of diesel required optimization. Every man-hour needed to matter. There was zero tolerance for waste, because Tony's royalty cut so deeply into margins that even minor inefficiencies destroyed profitability, yet Parker made it function. He operated with basic equipment, the little blue wash plant and battered D10 dozers acquired from the Hoffman crew. Nothing sophisticated, just functional machinery kept operational through pure mechanical resolve. And every cleanup, every ounce of gold recovered was channeled back into the operation. By 2014, Parker had transcended the novice phase. He formalized his operation into Little Flake Mining, a dedicated placer gold mining enterprise focused exclusively on the Klondike with prospective expansion into Alaska. This wasn't merely affixing a name to documents. It represented a strategic evolution from family-assisted venture to serious corporate entity engineered for scalability. Little Flake Mining functioned under a philosophy that distinguished Parker from nearly every other miner in the territory. Data over intuition. Most veteran Klondike miners depend on experience-based prospecting. Individuals who've pursued this for 30 to 40 years, trusting their instincts regarding where to excavate. Parker pursued a different methodology. He retained a productivity consultant whose exclusive responsibility was conducting rigorous time and motion studies, tracking truck movements, fuel consumption, shift patterns, identifying micro-inefficiencies that, when amplified across 24-hour operations, resulted in substantial losses. Consider that for a moment. While other miners were improvising based on feel, Parker was treating mining like industrial engineering. Every haul road optimized, every shift timed, every piece of equipment monitored for maximum uptime. The distinction between functioning at 80% efficiency versus 95% efficiency across a $250,000 daily burn rate, millions in annual savings. Little Flake Mining expanded from a single plant, small crew configuration into the largest private placer operation in the Yukon territory. But here's what truly distinguished Parker. He wasn't pursuing short-term gold. He was constructing infrastructure for long-term supremacy. Every dollar extracted from the ground was reinvested into superior equipment, additional claims, expanded operations. While other miners cashed out and lived off their earnings, Parker was playing an entirely different game. But operating on Tony Beat's territory, regardless of profitability, imposed a ceiling. The royalty structure meant Parker could never capture complete value from his own labor, and that realization planted the seed for what would become his defining maneuver, because Parker didn't intend to lease ground indefinitely. He wanted to own it outright, every acre, every ounce, every dollar. And in 2023, he made the move that changed everything: the Dominion Creek acquisition. The $15 million gamble that changed everything. 2023. In 2023, Parker Schnabel executed the most significant placer gold land transaction in modern Yukon history, and it wasn't remotely close. He acquired the Dominion Creek placer claims for $15 million. 400 individual mining claims covering approximately 10,000 acres of prime gold-bearing territory. And here's the stunner. Geological surveys estimated roughly 80,000 ounces of recoverable gold resting beneath that soil. Let's crunch those numbers rapidly. 80,000 ounces at a conservative $2,500 per ounce equals $200 million in gross asset value. When gold prices surge above $5,100 per ounce, which they've recently done, that figure leaps to $400 million. Parker paid $15 million for an asset potentially worth 20 times that amount, but it wasn't solely about the gold. It was about ground security. For years, Parker had been profitable operating leased claims, yet he remained perpetually vulnerable. Landlords could inflate royalties. Lease agreements could expire. The Dominion Creek acquisition fundamentally altered that equation. Now Parker owned the ground, controlled the water licenses, captured 100% of the value from every ounce recovered. The financial architecture of the deal matched the ambition of the mining itself. Parker contributed approximately $5 million up front, with the remaining $10 million structured as seller financing to be paid across 3 years. That translates to annual debt obligations of roughly $3.3 to $3.5 million, on top of the operation's already massive daily burn rate. To satisfy those payments while covering $100,000 to $250,000 in daily operational costs, Little Flake Mining had to sustain high volume, high-grade production, no allowance for poor seasons, no tolerance for equipment failures that halt production for weeks. And Dominion Creek wasn't merely any territory. It was virgin ground, largely untouched by previous generations, because the overburden was too deep and the expense of removing it was prohibitive before modern equipment existed. We're discussing 40 feet of frozen muck and worthless gravel sitting atop the gold-bearing pay layer. For Parker's operation, equipped with CAT 700 excavators and industrial-scale wash plants, that depth wasn't an obstacle. It was an advantage, because it meant the competition, smaller operators without the capital to relocate that much earth, simply couldn't touch it. The deal also included something critically important that most observers overlook: water licenses extending through 2030, granting Parker a guaranteed 6-year operational window to extract that 80,000-ounce reserve without regulatory uncertainty. But owning the ground was merely step one. Now Parker had to demonstrate he could actually extract the gold, and the infrastructure he built to do that, well, there's a reason people call it a city. 4 mining plants and a city-sized operation. Most Klondike miners operate 1 wash plant, perhaps 2 if they're ambitious and well capitalized. Parker Schnabel runs 4 simultaneously during peak season, and the logistics of making that function are genuinely extraordinary. Roxanne is the workhorse, the high-volume primary plant that has anchored Parker's operation for years. Legendary throughput, proven reliability, the kind of machine around which you construct an empire. Big Red is the mobile unit, custom built for rapid relocation to new cuts. When Parker identifies a hot pay streak, Big Red gets repositioned swiftly to capitalize before the seasonal window closes. Slucifer is the heavy-duty virgin ground processor engineered specifically to handle the dirty gravels of fresh claims where previous mining hasn't stripped out the clay and rocks. A beast constructed for Dominion Creek's deep, untouched deposits. And then there's Big Bob, the ultra-scale Dominion Creek plant, representing roughly $8 to $4 million in cumulative production since activation, processing earth at volumes most operations cannot even conceive. Running 4 plants means managing 4 separate processing streams, 4 sets of maintenance schedules, 4 potential failure points that could stall millions in weekly production. And these plants don't sit adjacent to one another. They're distributed across miles of active mining cuts, each requiring dedicated crews, haul roads, settling ponds, and support infrastructure. The excavation and haulage fleet supporting these plants is equally immense. Cat 700 and 460 excavators strip frozen overburden and load gold-bearing gravel into articulated rock trucks that traverse soft, muddy terrain most vehicles would sink into immediately. These are industrial titans built for punishment that would demolish civilian equipment within days. And here's what distinguishes Parker's operation from everyone else's. 24-hour shifts. Most miners shut down overnight. Parker operates 2 12-hour crews, keeping equipment in motion around the clock during the brief Yukon summer. That effectively doubles production capacity, but it also doubles the maintenance burden. Because here's the reality. Dominion Creek sits 2 hours from Dawson City with 0 cellular service and no nearby repair facilities. When something breaks, and in mining, things break constantly, you repair it yourself or watch production stall while debt obligations continue accumulating. When a wash plant feed chute collapsed mid-season, a catastrophic failure that could have cost weeks of downtime, Parker's crew had it rebuilt and operational within 48 hours. A single day of lost production costs $250,000. A week? Over $1.8 million gone. But the machinery is only half the operation. The other half is the 50 people running it in complete isolation in one of the most remote corners of North America. And managing that is a science of its own. How he manages 50 people in the middle of nowhere. Little Flake Mining employs approximately 50 personnel during peak season, and managing that workforce in one of Earth's most isolated environments is its own full-time operation. We're discussing portable modular housing units, industrial kitchens serving 3 meals daily, pre-made lunches delivered to operators and trucks so they don't have to cease working, and shift-based coordination meetings every 12 hours to maintain alignment. The camp functions like a compact municipality. Limited to non-existent cellular coverage means everything operates on radio communication. No internet to pass time, no Netflix after shift. Just work, eat, sleep, repeat for months straight during mining season. And the expense of sustaining that workforce is staggering. Assuming an average of 45 employees at $100,000 to $150,000 each when you factor salaries, bonuses, housing, and benefits, you're examining roughly $6.75 million in annual labor costs. That's before diesel, equipment, parts, or debt service. But here's what's fascinating. Parker's crew retention is substantially superior to most Klondike operations. In 2025, 7 members of Tony Beat's crew departed mid-season to join Parker's team, a move that sent shockwaves through the district. People called it the Beats defection. And it wasn't about compensation. It was about management philosophy. Tony Beats operates old school, brute force, fix it when it shatters, push equipment until it dies. Parker's operation is organized, maintenance-focused, data-driven. Equipment receives service before failures occur. Crews know their schedules weeks in advance. The entire operation flows more smoothly, and experienced miners notice. By engaging that productivity consultant to streamline workflows and investing in better maintained equipment, Little Flake Mining became the employer of choice in the Klondike. When you're working 12-hour shifts in the Yukon wilderness, the distinction between a well-run operation and a chaotic one isn't merely about comfort. It's about whether you survive the season without losing your sanity. And that reputation for discipline and efficiency extends into an area that most people would never associate with Parker Schnabel, one that has actually become one of his most powerful competitive advantages. The future, Australia Creek and beyond. Dominion Creek granted Parker ground security and an 80,000-ounce reserve, but Parker isn't the type to rest on accomplishments. In January 2023, Little Flake Mining signed a production royalty agreement on 5.5 miles of alluvial gold claims at Australia Creek with Metallic Minerals Corp. This arrangement is fundamentally different from Dominion. Instead of outright purchase, Parker functions as the exclusive extraction partner, receiving the majority of gold produced while paying Metallic Minerals a variable royalty. This allows Parker to access high-potential virgin ground without deploying another $15 million up front. The geological significance of Australia Creek is remarkable. From the 1920s to the 1960s, the valley served as a utility corridor, supplying water and hydroelectric power to massive floating dredges operated by Yukon Consolidated Gold Corporation. Because it was infrastructure, it was never mined. Modern drilling has revealed gold and gravel values rivaling the best producing areas of the historic Klondike, making it one of the most lucrative new discoveries in decades. Parker's commitment includes a $1 million minimum annual work requirement and a winter drilling program of 400 to 600 holes to map pay streaks before mining commences. It's aggressive, expensive, and precisely the frontier expansion that defines his approach. And then there's the technology dimension. As the operation advances into 2026 and beyond, the emphasis shifts from expanding land holdings to intensifying extraction efficiency through AI and automation. Parker is leading the Yukon in adopting autonomous excavation machinery, satellite-based mineral detection, and IoT devices monitoring operational efficiency in real time. The projection for 2026 includes deploying a new mining machine designed to boost gold extraction efficiency by 30%, part of a broader industry trend toward automation, expected to see 78% adoption among top-tier operators by 2026. Little flake mining is estimated to be 30% more energy efficient than it was in 2022, largely due to remote sensors, precision extraction techniques, and AI-driven geological mapping that identifies mineral veins with great accuracy while reducing waste material processed. And while Parker is pushing into the future with technology and new claims, there's one dimension of his empire that almost nobody in the Klondike saw coming. And it may be the smartest long-term play he's ever made. The environmental edge nobody discusses. Here's something that shatters the rugged gold miner stereotype. In 2022, Parker Schnabel received the Robert E. Leckie Award for Excellence in Environmental Stewardship from the Yukon government. Yes, the individual excavating millions of cubic yards of earth annually earned an award for environmental responsibility. And it wasn't merely public relations, it was strategic. Parker's operation implements advanced dust and water control systems, habitat restoration programs, and hydro-engineered tailings storage that exceeds regulatory minimums. The 2026 strategy includes integrated land use recovery, where topsoil restoration and native species seeding occur concurrently with mining operations, preserving land for future forestry or natural regeneration. Why bother when most miners do the bare minimum? Because environmental compliance isn't merely a regulatory obstacle, it's a competitive advantage. By surpassing environmental standards, Parker ensures his water licenses remain secure, faces reduced friction from local communities and regulators, and maintains operational flexibility that miners with questionable environmental records forfeit. Plus, there's the legacy mining cleanup angle. Historically, placer mining was inefficient, often leaving 10 to 20% of the gold in waste piles. Parker's operation has implemented modular ore sorting and tailings recovery systems that reclaim over 85% of residual minerals from historic dumps. That's not merely environmentally responsible, it's profitable. Reprocessing old tailings generates revenue while cleaning up messes left by previous generations. Honestly, the environmental focus is part of what separates Parker from the old guard. Individuals like Tony Beats constructed empires through sheer volume and persistence. Parker is building his through efficiency, innovation, and playing the extended game where regulatory compliance and community relations genuinely matter. It's a legacy play, and at 30 years old, he's already thinking decades ahead. Parker Schnabel is 30 years old. He owns 10,000 acres of the most gold-rich territory on the planet. He runs 4 industrial plants simultaneously. He employs 50 people in one of the most isolated corners of North America. And he sits on reserves that, at current gold prices, are worth $400 million. With Australia Creek still untouched beneath the surface, he started with a college fund and a gamble on dirt. He built the most productive private gold operation in the modern Klondike, and he's not close to finished. The question isn't whether Parker Schnabel becomes a billionaire. The geological surveys, the land holdings, and the trajectory of gold prices suggest that's less a question of if and more a question of when. The boy who buried his tuition money in the Yukon ground is building something that will outlast him. And when the next chapter of that empire unfolds, elite status will be the first place you hear about it. If this story hit different, subscribe, because we're just getting started.